All right. So Bennett Conlin is joining us. Thank you for hopping on with us, man. Everyone's favorite Daily Progress UVA reporter, former.
Of course. Of course. Thanks so much for having me.
So we're a day out of Selection Sunday. What did you do yesterday to ring in the holiday, so to speak?
Yeah, I was pretty excited. It's always a really fun week, right? Where you got Selection Sunday and then you got the first four, which gives you like a little taste, but it's not the same as the first Thursday. So you got a few days where you're looking at brackets, looking at betting lines, all that stuff. Certainly enjoyed that. I was taking in the bracket, looking at it, watching some of those shows. Love the fact that Tom Brady tried to steal the thunder, getting his reports in there.
What is up with that, man? Do you think that was intentional?
I think it was. I feel like he wanted to see just how much of a bump it could be. It was certainly interesting timing and weird because I had was FaceTiming a couple of friends, and then I muted the TV and saw it like on Twitter. But then it's got all the bracketology stuff, and like the left-hand side of the screen's got the matchups, and then you've got a Tom Brady tweet like in the center of the screen that they were talking about. And I was like, you know what, let's just get to this tomorrow.
So earlier in the day, that I don't know if you saw the Ronaldo video that
I hadn't seen much of that. I saw that he, I guess watched them play, but I hadn't seen much after that.
He after the game, Ronaldo says so you're done, right? And Brady kind of does a so that was earlier in the day. So that was like got people thinking.
A little teaser, yeah.
Yeah. And then as soon as the bracket comes out, it's like, boom, I'm back.
Unbelievable.
Wild.
Yeah.
So I had a blank bracket, and it really didn't make sense because now I'm just printing them. But as it was coming out, I was filling it in, like keeping up, making sure. But it's always a big holiday in the house, I feel like.
That's always fun. I don't often print things, but this is like 1 week a year. I'm like, I got to get them on paper. You got to have a paper bracket. It just adds to the fun.
Like scanning things.
Yeah.
Totally. So, 68 teams, first four coming up. I watched a ton of college basketball this year, as I'm sure you did. Who are some teams that you're thinking that you've watched, passed the eye test, and this is a team that could make a run at it?
Yeah, it's hard to try to balance the conference tournaments with should you put too much stock into them or how much of it is how they're going to play in the NCAA tournament. Arizona is obviously playing great. I think to me, they would be my favorite. I think Gonzaga is technically the betting favorite, but Arizona is playing awesome. I like the way they're looking. And then you obviously had Iowa and Tennessee felt like the big, power conference tournament winners that really stood out. So those teams are obviously hot. Tennessee, I think, got kind of a raw deal with that 3 seed.
So everyone's been talking about that, and they don't have any bad losses if you look at their resume.
Yeah.
But listening to what Lenardi said, Lenardi was basically saying how you can't make that much of a change within 24 hours. I don't know.
I was listening to some of that too. I thought that was interesting. Just for me, I don't know how you look at what Duke did and then look at what Tennessee did, and you're telling me that Duke's resume is better. That felt like
that's the name, I guess.
Little hat tip to Duke and Coach K there, maybe. But regardless, Tennessee, I think, will be an interesting one to watch in I guess they're in the South with Arizona too. So that's a challenging one. But I kind of feel like I'm going to buy on some teams that maybe have struggled a little bit recently. I think Auburn had kind of a nice draw. So I think they might be able to make a run if they can figure some things out. They've lost a few recently, but they've been really close. Some close losses there. I think they can rally from. So
Houston
I think
was a team that I saw that played Virginia earlier in the year, and they looked unstoppable. I was like, this team could make some noise, but they struggled with they lost a couple to Memphis.
Yeah,
they ended up winning the American, but the 5 seed.
Yeah, they're a really interesting one because I think Ken Palm's got them 4th in the country with the predictive metrics, but they've also they had a couple injuries to some key guys, so maybe they're not quite the same. And I think it was actually kind of interesting until they beat Memphis in the American, conference title game. They hadn't beaten a tournament team. That was their first win against a tournament team.
That's crazy.
I think that might actually be their one quad 1 win, which is insane. The American had a down year, so they do pass the eye test. They're a really solid team. It's just crazy when you look at the resume and how it goes with some of the metrics too. So that's interesting, and interested to see Virginia Tech. They look pretty good recently. I think they've got a decent team, and Texas feels like a good 6th seed to get because they're kind of a little bit in disarray where they brought a bunch of transfers in and never really gelled this year.
Yeah. So going back to, you said Arizona, I filled out like 100 brackets, as I'm sure you have as well. And every time it all leads to Arizona for me. They're a really good team. And they also have a Virginia connection too. Justin Kier was playing at,
Yeah.
he played 4 years with George Mason.
Yeah.
And then his last year, he only played 9 games. He got a little bit hurt, did a year in Georgia, and then used his COVID year to shoot over to Arizona. So, I used to go to all the George Mason games and I covered them. And to see him go from like, Mason and like, talking to him after games to being on the top team in the country is pretty cool. So I'm definitely rooting for them.
Yeah, that worked out nicely for him for sure. It's a good squad to be on this year. And yeah, they're a hard one to pick against because they have size, but they're good on both ends. They're a little bit like they run a pretty quick tempo and they score a lot, right? Which is kind of like some Purdue vibes where they have a bunch of really tall guys that have a fast tempo and score a lot. They actually play defense, which Purdue doesn't do. So,
and it's crazy that this guy's in his first year coaching, Tommy Lloyd.
Yeah, sat on the Gonzaga bench for a while and obviously learned quite a bit there as an assistant and did some good things himself. So that's wild. I think it's the first time too you've had like I guess Gonzaga was a 1 seed last year. Then you have the assistant move on and become a 1 seed with that same team as well. With Gonzaga still a 1, Arizona's a 1. So obviously they got some coaching pedigree in that program.
Yeah, and it reminds me a little bit of Texas Tech as well. Texas Tech, their coach, first year, Chris Beard built that team up and obviously played Virginia national championship, got a few transfers in this year. And they're another team who, when I'm doing my bracket, they're always, getting deep, Elite Eight. So they're a team with a first-year coach that been real surprising, great defensive unit.
Yeah, I would like to see them play Duke. I hope that matchup will be a fun one if it happens and comes to fruition. That's an interesting one with Gonzaga Duke. The potential rematch there in that region would certainly be fun to watch. They had a heck of a game in November, but we'll see how that would go now. So that's a fun one for sure.
Yeah. What do you think ACC wise? Of course, Duke is, a lot of people's pick and they have, a ton, so many NBA players. But then you have Miami, who I like, Virginia Tech, we mentioned, Wake Forest got snubbed, unfortunately, UNC, and one more. What do you think any of the ACC teams?
Yeah, I think it'll be kind of interesting to see how it all plays out with those squads. I think Miami's one. A lot of people are kind of leaning USC, but I think Miami could definitely get that matchup. As much as they like Auburn, they have struggled a little bit recently. So if they don't figure it out, Miami could be an interesting team to surprise some people. Virginia Tech feels like the one they're playing really hot, but even North Carolina, you get by Marquette. I don't know if Caleb Love can actually make some shots, right? It feels like when he's on, they're elite, and when he's not, it's like a college version of Russell Westbrook, where you got a guy who's going to shoot regardless. So they might be able to get by Baylor if they have some things going their way. So that's one that I'll certainly keep an eye on. And I actually kind of feel like Notre Dame, if they get in past Rutgers in that play-in game, the Alabama,
either of those teams, Rutgers or Notre Dame,
I do too.
Beat Alabama.
I do too. I think that's an interesting spot. Obviously, you might have Texas Tech right after, but it could be an interesting spot for sure. Some of it's just they didn't have the best years of conference, so some of those seeding kind of a tough spot to be in.
Any teams that some of the teams who a lot of casual college basketball fans don't see a lot. Some of the conference tournament winners, lower seeds that you have your eye on.
I love South Dakota State. And Vermont.
They shoot so many threes, man.
both those 13 seeds, Vermont, South Dakota State, even Chattanooga, I like a lot as well. So some of those 13s really stand out to me. I know the 12-5 is a popular one. That one, they don't look as good to me this year, the 12-5. There's usually one or two where I'm like, all right, I love that 12 over the 5. This year, I don't love them as much on paper. They tend to kind of come true. UAB's got some guys who can score it, so maybe they give Houston a run.
Kelly Walker.
Yeah. But South Dakota State, they're interesting against Providence. And I also just want to see South Dakota State play Iowa because that total would be like probably 160s. I mean, that'd be nuts. They run fast tempos. The defense aren't as good. They jack a bunch of threes. That'd be a heck of a second round game from just a scoring standpoint.
Looking at that 12-5 St. Mary's, Wyoming, or Indiana game with the first 4 there. Do you think the first 4 is gives you a little bit of an advantage because you can kind of, get the nerves out, get primed up, and then go hit the ground running into Thursday and Friday? Or if it was you, would you rather have the 3 full days of rest before.
Yeah,
Some teams more 3 days. Some teams more 3 days.
Yeah, true. It's interesting. I think it's one where like if your opponent was also going through the rest, right? Like if you're a 4-13 and there's no play in, like I think you're probably taking that. But it is interesting how some of those teams there's one that always kind of seems to get in that 11 or 12 seed area and then make a little bit of a run. I think some of that is true, like what you were saying, where you get the rhythm going. And you already have a win under your belt. You played more recently. You mentioned
feeling loose, man.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't have the nerves. You just won a game. Like you barely snuck in. So you're probably excited to be in. And then you already won a game and you're going in feeling kind of loose and fresh. So yeah, I think there is some benefit to like, hey, we just played in this kind of environment and the nerves are going down a little bit. And typically too, right? If you're the 11 or 12 with the play and you're playing like a 5 seed or a game, you could probably have a chance to win. And the crowd you would think would be kind of neutral in terms of maybe it's in a place where neither side has a huge travel advantage. Obviously, if you're 16, I think you take your win over the 16 and get ready to lose by 50. But yeah, I think those spots are interesting for like Indiana.
That's a weird rule. I'm not going to keep you much longer, but that's a weird rule. Like it should be the at-large bids who have to play the playing games. If you won your conference tournament, I feel like you should get a spot in the tournament, not have Bryant and Wright State, playing for a spot.
The only benefit is it counts as an NCAA tournament
Right.
wins. So like the conference gets money and stuff too, like
Okay.
the same amount of money I think as you would get as like winning a national title. So it's for the conference. So I think it's split the same. So like I think they like it there. But it would definitely suck to win your conference tournament and be like you don't even get to the right to like play, Arizona yet. You have to earn it. And I do think that Bryant Wagner game's actually got a chance the Wright State game has a chance to be kind of hilarious because Peter Kiss for Bryant can fill it up. And he's also got kind of a cocky on court attitude. Yeah, he's a fun one to watch, I guess.
So my first writing job was covering Rutgers for one of the SB Nation blogs.
Yeah.
And Peter Kiss actually was a transfer to Rutgers from Quinnipiac, like in 2017 or something. And he sat out his year. And then when he finally got eligible, he was a starter at Rutgers. So a starter in the Big Ten. And then like having some decent games. But then his playing time, if you look at his game log, his playing time just like fell off a cliff. So much to where his second year eligible, he only played in 2 games. And I asked, around, and I guess it was strictly like he couldn't handle defense at the Big Ten level. But you see what he's doing at Bryant now, and it's like some coaches have different philosophies, and
it's something. Yeah, because I hadn't seen him much, and then I saw kind of what he did against Wagner and like the highlights too, where he's talking
like picking off passes. And, like it was crazy. I mean, that's something. It's something to we see it more and more. Like these high recruits going to smaller schools and just like balling out.
Yeah, it's something. And from a betting perspective, they played Houston earlier this year and lost by like 70. I would kill to watch them play Arizona. Like that spread whatever that opens us would be hilarious.
Yeah, some teams just aren't good matchups. Like, certain times you watch 1 versus 16 or 2 versus 15 and it's pretty close. And then other times it's like right from the jump, this is just not a good matchup. Players, we mentioned Peter Kiss. That's a good segue. Peter Kiss, awesome, fun guy to watch. He's going to have Twitter abuzz during the first 4. Some other guys you might want people to know about.
He's certainly one. Ryan Davis at Vermont is a fun one, like a true post guy there, but he can also step out a little bit. He's one of the mid-major guys I'm looking at. I kind of like everyone at South Dakota State too, because they can fill it up, and good on Richmond for getting in. I think they're a fun team, and they have some guys. Jacob Gilliard can really score and was great in the A-10 tournament. So
that's unique, that Richmond story, right?
Yeah.
Like these guys, they come back as like a unit, basically. We're going to come back together, use this extra COVID year and make one good run at it. And then you disappoint throughout the regular season.
Yeah.
And then they rally and win the A-10. It's an awesome story. I don't like their draw, but
yeah, awesome me neither. And they were kind of getting smacked around in some of those games. I think they had double-digit comebacks in 3 of the 4 A-10 games. So I don't know. It's a group of seniors that didn't want to see it end. I do think betting the over would be fun in Iowa Richmond, because I think they're just both going to go pretty fast and make a bunch of shots and maybe struggle a little bit on defense. But Yeah, some of the mid-major guys finally getting a chance to show out is cool. And like Michigan, Colorado State, David Roddy for Colorado State. I'm very interested to see how he does. And then also kind of who he's matched up with on Michigan. I wonder if there will be any situations where if he's at the 5 and goes up against Hunter Dickinson. Yeah, I know they use him at the 4 a lot, but gosh, that'd be fun to see 6'6", like 250 against 7'1", 280 or whatever it is.
Kind of opposing styles, right? Like,
yeah.
Kind of like Zach Randolph versus, I don't know.
Yeah, it's something. Roddy's really cool. I mean, he's got like, I was watching one of their games this year, and you imagine since he's so big, he looks like a fullback or something. He would just take you in the post. And he crossed some guy over the top of the key and nailed the 3. And I was like, oh my God.
Who is this guy?
Yeah, he's got some moves.
All right. UVA's in the NIT.
That is true.
I was like kind of putting that in my mind going in, and I'm like, I don't even know if they'll accept a bid, but I guess everyone accepts a bid, right? I don't think we heard of any team that said no to the NIT, or we don't know yet.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense, I guess, right? Get some experience for the guys who are coming back in postseason. And I think the hosting, even though they were unseeded, gives them a little bit of an edge. I think they can make a run. I think Tony will get them to care enough. That's the
problem with, like, especially betting it. Like, I'm kind of thinking, like, I want to bet it, but you don't know people's incentive, or like if they care.
That's what's tricky. I saw like Iona, I think they were +7 or something against Florida. So I'll probably end up taking that because Mike White just is going to leave for Georgia. I can't imagine Florida in the NIT with a departing coach is all that amped up. I imagine Rick Pitino could get his guys fired up to beat an SEC school. But
do you think Rick Pitino is going to move on at some point?
I would think so, right? It seemed like when he took that job, it was like, all right, you do it for a couple of years.
Stepping stone.
Yeah, rebuild the reputation, or at least just have enough distance between the, scandal and you getting a new job to fix it. And guy can coach basketball. There's enough programs out there that are going to say, turn a blind eye to whatever he might do on the side.
All right, Bennett, thanks for jumping on with us tonight, man. Maybe we'll get up after a couple of rounds and chat it up again.
For sure. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate it, buddy.